Good evening, good afternoon, good morning to you all, depending on where you're signing in from. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Jonathan Yakasha with Tech Connect. I will be the host and moderator for today's Commercial Space All-Stars conversation, and it really is a conversation. We have got three representatives here today to talk about what they're doing in commercial space, why they're doing it, and perhaps, hopefully, some insights for all of you if you're in a similar position to where they are. So we are joined today by Bosco Lai, co-founder and CEO of Little Place Labs. Bosco, go ahead and give yourself a little wave there, please. We are also joined by Brian Manning, co-founder and CEO of Xona Space Systems. He's in my upper right-hand corner there. And last but not least, Jeremiah Pate, founder and CEO of Lunasan. Gentlemen, thank you very much for taking some time today. Glad to have you guys here. For our attendees, I've got some scripted questions I'm going to ask these guys, but from the registration, you all have questions that you want to ask them as well, and fantastic for it. We've got a number of them here. At any point during today's session, if you've got questions you want to pose to any one of these three individuals, please use the Q&A box, drop your question in, and roughly about halfway through today's session, we will take as many of those questions as we can. So with that, we can get to our questions. Guys, pretty standard first question. Tell our audience who you are, what you do, and what you guys do in commercial space. Brian, let's start with you.
Sure. Yeah, glad to be here. Appreciate the opportunity to chat. So my name's Brian Manning, the CEO and one of the co-founders here at Xona. At Xona, what we're building is kind of like Starlink of GPS. So it's a bunch of small satellites, much closer to Earth, designed to provide very high performance navigation instead of communications. And so a little bit of the background on where Xona came from. So I'm a former SpaceX engineer, and our CTO, Dr. Tyler Reed, came from Ford and their autonomous vehicle group. And the company is a bit of the merger of those two worlds, where a lot of it revolves around Tyler's work at Ford and really searching for a solution that can provide the level of accuracy that is needed to keep something like a hands-free driving or autonomous vehicle actually centered in its lane, which means getting down to centimeter accuracy instead of the several meter accuracy that GPS can provide, but also needing a solution that is reliable enough that you can actually take your hands off the wheel and ensure that the vehicle's staying where it needs to go and tracking on track. But the real trick and challenge to this, though, is that to really serve something like the automotive market, which has hundreds of millions of vehicles, you really need to be scalable and affordable. And as soon as you require a user to add a new antenna or a new chipset or really any new hardware, you kind of blow that out of the water. So we took that to heart and designed our system from day one around the idea that we could take all the complexity of doing really high performance navigation and put it on the infrastructure and put it in the satellites. And this enabled us to provide very reliable, robust, and accurate navigation capabilities directly to existing GPS chips with just a software or firmware update. So we're pretty excited about what we've been able to do there. And we found that if you can do that, you can serve a lot more than just the automotive world, that there's about 7 billion other devices on the planet that are using GPS today that would like better capability too. So if you can actually make a service that is accessible to them, the demand is virtually unlimited. Yeah, we've been off and rolling for a little over 5 years now. Just launched our second satellite actually last Monday. So that's pretty exciting to see ramping up and moving towards deployment of the system. So yeah, glad to be here.
Jeremiah, how about you?
Yeah, so I'm Jeremiah Pate, founder and CEO of Lunasan. And what we're building at Lunasan is effectively a Google Earth for the underground, using state-of-the-art technology to directly image subsurface and find valuable materials, minerals, really anything that's buried beneath the surface. And I had the initial idea for Lunasan when I was working with the Lunar Planetary Lab at the University of Arizona. And there was a certain project they were working on called MARSIS, which is using low frequency radar to map subsurface on Mars. And in that moment, I really was struck with the realization that we're mapping ice on the moon and Mars, and yet on our own planet to find valuable materials, we're still digging holes in the ground and effectively guessing to where we can find a new mineral deposit. And so that was really the spark that began Lunasan. And that was about 7 years ago now. It was a very long journey to get where we are today because other planets like the moon and Mars are much easier to image subsurface than our own planet. But we've developed a proprietary technology stack that allows us to image up to kilometers subsurface and accurately map subsurface resources with our technology.
Go, your turn.
Awesome. Happy to be here. Bosco, I'm the co-founder and CEO of a company called Little Place Labs. So what we are addressing is what we call latency to space data and insights. So for folks that dial in, I'm sure you know that there's a lot of satellites in space. A lot of them are collecting useful data, what we call Earth observation or remote sensing satellites. So these data is being transformed to different types of information, alerts, for different users on ground. But there's a problem with the latency. So latency is defined as, by the time the data is being collected to the time where the end user is actually having access to that piece of data or insights. Usually it's days or even hours of delay, which doesn't really work for time-sensitive situations. So we really focus on the situations where there's high impact and time is a critical element, like national security, defense, disaster management, object detection that requires very quick insights, those sort of use cases. And what we do is we build software applications that run on the satellite. So immediately when the data is being collected, we process that into useful information on the satellite itself, reducing to need to downlink everything, which takes a lot of time. And it's also very expensive. So to get that insights from the capture to the end users within minutes, it's our goal. So we are about 3.5 years old, have some success and traction with the US DoD and some commercial use cases so far. And yeah, happy to be here and share more of what we do.
Thanks, guys. All right. So one thing that you all mentioned is you guys have been doing this for a few years now, 3.5 years to 7 years. Looking backwards, historically, what has been the biggest hurdle for your organization as you started to grow the company, the team, the technology? Bosco, let's start with you.
Yeah, hearing Brian, you guys' background. My background is not space, so I spent about 13 years in a global investment bank, involved in the commodity and energy markets, from project finance to trading to risk management. And at that time, I came from an end user point of view that, hey, I need data to tell me, what to do from a trading perspective, risk management perspective, and they not necessarily being all space, right, but just all types of data that is allowing us to make quick decisions. And I couldn't find them for a lot of use cases. So that really locks in my head as to, hey, if I can see that opportunity, I would jump onto it. And then what really took me on is we started the company when I was in Oxford for my executive MBA. I met my co-founder. And we went into different competition and hackathons to try to understand the market a bit better. And one of the global challenge was called Gravity Challenge, organized by Deloitte and AWS. And the overarching problem is, there is a lot of bottleneck in getting data, useful information, quick enough to the end users. So we participated in that work on the challenge for about 8 months, and we won it. And so that gave us the, I guess, validation and that spark to start the company. But again, everything in space is, it takes more time usually than we all expected. So especially on our end, what we are doing is not just build a software application that can run on the satellite. We're also building what we call a syndicate and connectivity with a lot of satellite partners, so that we can utilize some of the capacity and some of the assets in space. And if you think about that, more like modular ecosystem, right, rather than vertically integrated system, which is what we have seen in space over the past decades, it takes time to build, right? It's not just how quick can we actually build models and application. We need the partners to come in with the right asset, with the right compute that can, do that processing being launched in space, and the use case and the users to come along. So I think, what's taking us long, I wouldn't say longer, is that ecosystem with all critical players coming in to form this new way of doing space and space insights.
Okay. Brian, what about you? What's been the biggest challenge for you guys?
Yeah, I'm not sure that there's a singular one necessarily. It's been a lot of ups and downs. I mean, everything from seeing our bank go bankrupt in the middle of it, and then, I mean, that got turned around pretty fast though. Um, if I'd say if I had to kind of narrow it down to one, kind of almost reframe this a little bit as like big lessons that we've learned along the ways also. So I have an engineering background. Our entire founding team had engineering backgrounds, and building a constellation of satellites is a very high cap thing. It requires a lot of money to do it, and that doesn't mean it's a bad business by any stretch of the imagination. It just means that there are a limited number of investors, and there's a limited number of places realistically to get the amount of capital that you need. And I think as an engineer, it was natural for us, for myself also in the earlier stages, to focus more on the technology side of things, as it was really focusing on the sales side of things. And when we step back and look at it, if you're going to justify, to your backers that, okay, this is really worth spending the money on, they want to see where the money is going to come back from. And so we didn't spend enough time, I think, in the early days focusing really on moving customers down the pipeline. Like, we built a huge pipeline and said, okay, there's clearly a bunch of interest out here, but we didn't actually put in the requisite effort to carry a lot of those customers from interested. It was like, oh, well, we know they're interested now, but we didn't actually carry them through into things that were the clear justifications that investors and financial backers really need to see to get comfortable with seeing, okay, yeah, there is a massive market here. This is something that's worth betting on. So it was kind of a transition that I think we had to make as a company, and learn some lessons along the way there of really how much you need to focus on your customers, but not just getting them interested, really getting them on the journey with you.
Yeah, so in our case, we had the misfortune of really working with the only industry that's slower than the space industry, mining. Mining is very laughably molasses-like in how quickly it moves, and that's just a cultural norm of the industry. And so we started off thinking that, okay, due to our technological know-how, we'll be able to speed things up because our technology will be just so good. And so, like what you were describing, Brian, we really focused on our comfort area of technology. Given my own background, and then also some of the other key players on our team, former NASA backgrounds, et cetera. So not necessarily a lot of work working directly with customers. So we spent a lot of effort on tech development and not really listening to exactly what the customer wanted. And if I were to redo this again, I would say from day one, we work closer with those customers, not just get bits and pieces like we did, go back to our proverbial workshop, and then come back a year later with our solution, but talk to the customer at every step of the way and really have this great iterative dialogue with your customer where you're talking to your customer, you build a little bit of progress on your technology, and you go back to them. We really didn't do that. We wanted to have a nice cathartic ta-da moment where we showed our technology to them, and ended up having to go through those cycles again, but with a lot more latency.
Okay. So the last question was kind of the problems that you guys encountered. Flipping it around, what are some of the tools, the resources, the kinds of individuals or even mentorship that you as a CEO found beneficial, or you as representative of your organization found to be helpful for your broader teams? What made a positive impact for you guys? Who'd like to start us off?
Happy to go.
Sure.
Again, as a non-space background, non-DoD background person, um, the most beautiful thing that happens to us is there are a lot of organizations, ecosystem, and people that are willing to help. So like even Jonathan, right? How did we meet was from AWS Space Accelerator, right? So at the very early on, we just jump onto every ecosystem, communities that we can find that can help us learn more about, the sector and the end customers, side of things. So just to name a few, right? Capital Factory, Catalyst Campus, AWS Accelerator, Techstars. Like those are just some of the ecosystem that we're part of that really allow us to go in and go, hey, what does it mean by working with the DoD? What does even DoD mean? DoD is a big word, right? Colors of money, what are some of the mechanism, contracting opportunities that we can utilize as a small business? We start to go through that and really get ourselves, the 101, and then we level up from there. The second one that I can point to is, I'm always about building teams, surround myself with people that knows a lot more than myself in their domain areas, right? That's how we build teams. So at the early on, we have identified, folks that we need in terms of us, data scientists, geospatial specialists, and DoD, domain experts, is how we do it. So within the team, we have, you know, folks set up in 25 years in big small companies on the geospatial side. We have brought in a retired 24-year Intel officer last year into our company to really level up our understanding and how to navigate, through national security to bring our product, to the right hands. So again, like I think there's a lot of ways that a small business can utilize as long as you're open-minded and you keep just going out, showing up, and build those partnerships. You never know what one conversation can lead you to. One participation in a program can lead you to, may not pay back in 30 days, in a year, but it will definitely pay back somehow, somewhere.
Yeah, I can add that. So I think for us, I mean, I think it varies very much by the stage of company and also by the people at the company. And so, for us specifically, we had powerhouse founding team, a bunch of PhDs and master students, and so the technical side, we had very little need for additional support on. But none of us had ever started a company, or all first-time founders. So we went through the Seraphim Space Camp Accelerator, and that was very helpful in the very early days of what is a pitch deck, what are investors looking for, and kind of walking through some of those early pieces, and that was very valuable at that stage. And then as we got later, it's okay. We needed advisors to help us figure out how do we operate internal company HR and operations. So I think we found a lot of value in getting different advisors that fill the different holes that we have, and also putting them on 2-year agreements rather than 4-year. That some of the we had some longer term advisor agreements, and it's a lot of those people created a lot of value for us for a long time. But what we found is that our needs are shifting so quickly that it just is a kind of a tip, since like there's a lot of startups here, is doing a 2-year agreement that you can extend another 1 or 2 years or however long you need to made more sense for us. Because even now, we've been adding a few new advisors that are, again, generally specific to the open areas that we have. We're spending more time in Washington D.C., for example, and so people helping us navigate larger scale government contracts and pieces like that, which is just a very different spot than we were in as a company. And so I think any startup that is on a good growth trajectory, their needs are naturally going to evolve pretty quickly over the years. So.
Yeah, so one resource for us that really helped, especially was Techstars. So we were in a number of accelerators, the AWS accelerator, we're another Seraphim Space Camp grad. But AWS helped us a lot in terms of those strategic connections. And then Techstars helped us a lot, especially because we weren't in their space program. We were in their just general Techstars cohort. And so what that did for us is it kind of took the shiny veneer of space off our company, and we were just another company in the mix. And that meant that we had a lot of different people from different industries critiquing our business model and our different perspectives. And so we were able to stress test our company really early on with a lot of different angles. And so that was really instrumental in us having a lot of progress. It was kind of a phase change for the company, so to speak, was being in the Techstars program. And that allowed us to make the most use of where we were at and our company growth cycle there. I also completely second what you're saying, Brian, about the advisors. We had a number of advisors from our days in the Seraphim Space Camp, and they were very helpful in early on company growth. But as time went on, we had different needs. We had to get a completely different group of advisors to really fill in those gaps. So those needs change, on a yearly basis. And so being able to refresh with different perspectives and advisors, I think, was really integral to our growth as a company.
So kind of uniform across the three of you is being willing to put yourself out there as an organization, And then when you do, being open to those outside perspectives that may reinforce some positive ideas that you have about your organization, but also perhaps point out some shortcomings in that organization. And then also just being nimble, not locking yourself into an agreement with somebody who may not be necessarily the long-term resource that you need at that particular time. So that's good for you guys. All right. Um, Given that time and money and mental bandwidth are limited and resources for everybody, how do you guys balance the need to establish commercial clients versus the advantages of strategic collaboration with somebody who isn't going to be a client but is more of a partner? How do you guys balance those two
Mhm.
those goals?
Yeah, so in our case, really, it's been trying to find partners that lie at the intersection of those two poles, and that's been most helpful for us. So one partnership that's been really um, an accelerant for Lunazon has been our work with Lockheed Martin, and so Lockheed Martin Ventures is an investor in Lunazon, but we also work with different organizations within Lockheed to develop our technology. And then also we bid on contracts in partnership with Lockheed. So we're able to have really these kind of Swiss Army knife partnerships where you can achieve multiple through a single partner. And obviously not every company is going to be that way, but that's the ideal scenario is you want to make these partnerships really multifaceted instead of just trying to achieve one goal. Because at any point in time when you're have that singular focus on one goal, odds are you have a blind spot somewhere else. So having a partnership that is really flexible is key towards that long term growth.
So I saw you nodding your head a bit while Jeremiah was talking there. Anything you want to add?
Or was that me or Bosco?
Scott, is there anything that you wanted to add?
Sorry, me? Bosco?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, Ed. Yeah, sorry, I couldn't hear. Absolutely, absolutely. Again, just stepping back from what what I was saying about Little Place Labs, right? We come in with a completely new way of doing space, right? Is everyone comes in and bring their own piece, which is again very, very different, and we get challenged from day one all the time, right? Hey, this is how the way it works, right? This is how defensibility means, right? This is whatnot. And we want to do it new, in a new way. And what that means is really, really strong partnerships. And it's like beyond just a piece of, LOI or MOU. It is that
Mhm.
we have to be very much aligned on our vision and the business model and how we can go and address the problems together and how we can make this a profitable business together. This ranges from again satellite companies to hardware companies, computer companies, and even like end users, right? So that takes a lot of time, and I think again there is a little bit of a different mindset that we have to bring to the table, right? To really open up conversations. And sometimes, at the first stage, it could be hard because that's not how things work. Um, but through time, I think a lot of that proven to be valuable, and we built trust across the board. But it was extremely critical for us in terms of partnerships because we have no plans to do everything ourselves, and we're very dependent on our partners, and vice versa.
Yeah, I kind of go back to the previous comment. Like, I don't think there's necessarily a balancing of like, am I going to spend time on customers or partners? Like, if you're not spending time on the customers, you're just not going to exist for very long. So I think you kind of have to figure out how you're making time to make the customers happy, and that ultimately is what should drive, in my mind, what partnerships you as a company you need. And so, for example, from our side, everyone thinks of satellite navigation as the satellites. But what most people overlook is that with any service, arguably the most challenging part is the user equipment. How do you actually get the service to the users? And satellite navigation is it's a three-legged stool. You've got the ground segment and the mission operations control. You've got the satellites, and then you have the user side. And for us, it made the most sense to our core competency was much more in the space segment and the ground and the operation side, But on the user side, this is where we looked at it. It's like, well, we could build a piece of user equipment, but it would be for one targeted market that might be underserved. And GPS is something that's integrated into everything from dog collars to F-22s. And the user equipment looks massively different. And there's a lot of companies already building equipment into these different areas. And even I don't know of any single company that covers that entire range. And so for us to be as ubiquitous and universal as GPS is, we made a very strategic decision. Like, we need to partner with the companies that have the experience, that know how to do this, that know how to do it better than we do. And that is how we can best serve our customers. And so we have a large and growing ecosystem of different receivers now that cover that full range. We signed a big partnership with Trimble earlier this year, which is one of them who's also actually a customer. So some have spanned both sides, but yeah, I think it really drives back to what partnerships do you need, again, based on what your gaps or capabilities are in the company to best serve your customers.
Question that I'm going to ask our three panelists here before I get to your questions. We've got a number of them that have come in already, so thank you very much for that. If you've got questions, please go ahead and submit them via the Q&A box, and we'll get to them very, very shortly. Guys, one final question that I'm going to have for you before we switch to the audience questions. Going into the Wayback Machine, think about where you were when you first started your organization. What advice, suggestions, helpful hints do you guys have for those commercial space entrepreneurs who are just getting underway? Maybe they have just decided to establish their company. Maybe they have established their company and they're trying to figure out what they're doing or how they're going about doing it. What guidance and advice can you guys give them? Jeremiah, you'd like to start? I put you on the hot seat there, but then Brian started to smile like he was going to answer first. So I'll let you guys fight it out over who wants to answer first.
I have a quick one. Mine is advice on advice. So one thing that when you're a founder, you have no money, you have no real sort of traction early on when you're just getting started. But the one thing that you have tons of and too much of is advice. Everybody is trying to tell you this is how the world works, and it's all just this cacophony of different opinions, and it's very easy to get overwhelmed by that and to kind of lose track of where you're going in this noise. And so the important lesson that I wish I learned more as an early stage founder was being able to parse through that advice and know that 99% of that advice is completely wrong, because you're the only one in your shoes. All these people that are trying to tell you advice don't really know your situation. And so most of it, the vast majority, is going to be wrong. So there's really two filters that have helped me over the years. And the first filter is understand your why. Why are you doing this? What's really the rationale? What makes you get up out of bed in the morning and try to achieve your crazy idea? Like, what is that reason why? And then filter the advice accordingly, really to what's pertinent, what's germane to that why. And then the other heuristic that's really helped me with trying to sort out advice is look for the commonalities. Try to take 100 people's opinions and try to find that kernel of truth in what's common across those opinions, while understanding that the vast majority of that input is wrong because they don't understand the context of what you're trying to achieve as a founder.
Applause on that one. So thank you very much. That apparently resonated with the audience. Thanks, Jeremiah. Bosco, Brian, who'd like to go next?
Yeah, I would say two things. Oh, sorry. Two things. One is, at the beginning, when we think about like real-time insights, right? There is just so many different use cases, like just so many, not just within national security, right? Like what are the segments that can benefit from having quicker information and so on and so on. I think, to do it again, we would definitely narrow that scope a bit, right? Just to focus on a few first and then get off the ground, get useful feedback from the customer, and really focus on our tech development on those areas instead of trying to boil the ocean too much. And then the second one is, we also have been quite optimized in terms of how we start, really using a good combination of, onshore, offshore team members plus fractional full-time team members and here and there. If I were to do it again, I think we would be, let's say, less optimized, right? Just to bring people and try to grow quicker, try to build up some of those pieces quicker. Obviously, we're not saying that, hey, we should spend a lot more. There's always a good balance, but that would be something that I would, take a harder look if I were to do this again.
Hey, Brian.
Yeah, I mean, you'll probably notice a theme on mine here of like really kind of make sure you're actually solving a problem for somebody, and like, are there customers that are going to use this or not? And you don't, you probably don't need as much technology as you think you do to get that justification or validation. It's also something you're never going to learn sitting behind a spreadsheet. Like, we learn so much when you actually get out and talk to your customers and go visit them. And I mean, for us, even it's like you'll visit the farmers in the field that are using this and like, oh, this doesn't work by the trees. Like, oh yeah, I got to shut the tractor off every time because it doesn't work over there. I'm like, well, that's interesting. That's because GPS isn't working over there. There's so many things you learn. Like, you'll never learn that on a spreadsheet. You just got to get out and actually talk to the folks. And I think, like, part of a lesson that we had is we got stuck in a bit of a loop of thinking that we had to have satellites in space to actually prove and show, that what we're doing had value. And stepping back, I mean, what our value isn't the satellites. Our value is the capability and what they do for the customer. And so you don't really need the satellites. You're selling in many, especially in the early stages, you're oftentimes selling an idea, and a vision of, okay, if we were able to do this, are you interested in it? And if you can't even get yeses on that, and again, a yes doesn't mean a signed contract. I mean, a yes could be a letter of support that says something as simple as, yes, if you build this, we would be interested in looking at it. And even things like that can be simple demand signals that go a really long way with investors. But if you can't find customers that are even interested enough to say, yeah, I'd be interested in taking a look at that if you built it, then it might be worth stepping back and looking at, okay, are we a hammer looking for a nail? Are we looking at the wrong market? Or like something else might be going on here. And that's when I think it's time to reevaluate a bit.
All right. Thanks, guys. All right. So the audience has not disappointed. The questions have started to flow in. Audience members, we will get to as many of your questions as we can. So thank you very much for that. I would much rather have way too many questions than no questions at all. It means you guys are interested, and one person has already called this conversation as inspiring. So thank you early for our three panelists for taking the time out of their day to do this. So turning to audience questions. What key internal or external tasks and resources should startups prioritize and prepare for when entering into a relationship with a strategic partnership? Big question. Boil it down. What's important when you guys are looking at a strategic partnership? What kind of things do you need to have in place? What kind of things do you need to consider?
Make sure you have a lawyer. I don't know, that's probably an obvious one, but
Okay, I'm
all the
seeing
time.
your other two panelists
Um,
nodding emphatically on that one.
Very true. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, we went through this even on like, the very early investment docs. Like, do we really need a lawyer to review this? Do we not? And the bigger you get, probably the more important it gets. But for something like a strategic partnership, if you're going to be signing up for something that could impact future of the company, it will also impact the future of your investability. That it's definitely worth spending some lawyer money on. Typically, most early stage investors have pretty good lawyer connection. Like, they know like lawyers that will work with you on a budget. Um, so I would definitely suggest that. I would also suggest that, like, really need to consider, and this is kind of more on strategic investing, really carefully consider your board composition, especially around strategics, because in later stages, if you do, like, I would like very deeply consider, if a strategic investor wants a seat on the board, taking a really close look at that, because that's something that other investors can get a little bit spooky about, especially as you grow. So,
You guys want to add to that?
So one rule that's really helped me, and this was actually a rule that I think we learned from a couple of the accelerators that we were in, is when working with strategic investors or strategic partnerships, it's great to have two times in number of partners. So you want to have an even number. If you have an odd number, for example, then folks look at that as it's a soft acquisition where you have a company that's come in and taken you over without actually taking you over. So by having an even number of strategic investors or even partnerships, you're showing that these are resources for your company, but you're not a resource for that company exclusively. And really ancillary to that as well, it's good to look at these agreements and have a lawyer review them so you know you're not getting yourself into an exclusive arrangement or even a perceived exclusive arrangement, because that really hurts your future investability and your future partnerships with other companies in the industry. So being certain around that and that perception of exclusive partnerships is really really crucial. And the earlier you are, the more crucial it becomes.
You'd like to add to either of those two?
Yeah, just a quick one. Just stepping back, right? There is always a reason of why you're even looking at this partnership. And I would say a lot of times it's because, something like a particular project or particular, contract or an opportunity that, you know, we are all looking at and go, hey, we can join forces to do this particular project, particular opportunities more optimally. But for me, especially for key and bigger partnerships, and when we talk about strategic, you have to look beyond that, right? What is there for the two companies or this partnership out of this particular opportunity, more tactical view of what we can look at. And there has to be complete alignment or as much alignment as possible. Sometimes you get into this partnership and let's say the value is aligned, right? We all understand what you can bring to the table, what we can bring to the table. But let's say if you're not aligned in the timeline, you want this to happen or you need this to happen as a smaller company in 3 months time, in 6 months time, in a year's time. And the other side, it's like, nah, maybe we can do it later. Maybe we can push that back even after you sign that piece of paper, it doesn't really mean that much, right? So I think when you look at alignment, that word alignment and expectation has to come from different aspects, not just how much value can we gain, how much value are we putting in, but priority, right? Urgency. And the long-term goal of the two companies is that well aligned for us to get into this key partnership, alongside with everything that have already been said, super important. Legal paperwork, terms, right? That all dictates that alignment, as we go on.
All right. One of the other questions that we had come in the pre-registration kind of flips things on its head. Typically, investors are looking to ask the entrepreneurs about their company. What is it that you want investors to understand about your organization, rather than the investors telling you what information they need? What information do you need them to have about your early stage company?
I mean, this might be a bit of a snarky sounding answer, but like,
I like snark, go for it.
yeah, like, is this hype or is this real? And like, it feels like there's a lot of things that are, I think part of the best sorting on that is like, where is the money actually going to come from? And not just looking at where does the direct money come from, but actually chasing it like two or three or four levels down. And like, does this turn into a circle? And it's just like the money's coming, like this is a perpetual motion machine, or is there really a big market that's being served? And that's, I think, where I think some companies struggle in that, where if you chase, okay, wow, these have all these customers, but okay, their customers are them and their customers are them, and this is just running the perpetual motion machine, which kind of makes a house of cards. Where I'm, like I said, I've always been I don't call it outspoken a little bit, but to me, like this, the idea of a space economy is a little bit abstract, in that I've always seen space as a distribution channel, not an economy, where it can be used to distribute goods and or services around the globe, but ultimately the customers that you're serving are not in space for the most part, most of the customers are on Earth. And is this company serving a big, space is in many ways as useful, or space's value largely is the customers it can serve on Earth, more so than other things in space. And so there are definitely space companies that serve other space companies and are necessary and do very well at it. But the ones that really get me excited are how, what is the market on Earth? And again, back to that, where's the money actually going to come from? Because even if you're a space company serving other space companies, the money at some point has to be most likely coming from some Earth-based market of somebody buying or using something.
So, anything that you think investors need to know about early stage space companies?
Um, we have been fundraising for the past few months, so just two quick thoughts there, or two specific conversations that I've had, which I enjoy a lot. One is with with one of those funds, we spend the first 60 minutes not even talking a single thing about what we do in the company. It's all about who we are as co-founders at a very deep and personal level. It was a very, very refreshing and pleasant conversation. And I think especially for early stage companies slash space, a lot of things that we've been thinking about is, yeah, there is a problem that we need to solve, but a lot of the ideas, vision could be considered a moonshot compared to other, sectors and other stages, right? So, coming in and trying to really understand us as a person and us as a team, um, at the first go, I think it was really, really refreshing. And then the second bit is again, like going back to Brian's comment, right? Like you got to make sure that you're building something that people care about. But oftentimes, after you have answered that, the following question doesn't come in. Okay, fine, but how do you actually make it happen and bring that to your customer? I think that includes a bit about go to market, adaptability of your end customer. How much education do you need, for them to learn what you're building, and is that going to be hard to integrate or easy? I think that is oftentimes where companies or investors stop when they go, hey, there's a demand signal, quite good, check, right? But there's a reality, and there could be a valley in terms of having something that is useful to being able to really bring it to the end users and they can use it more seamlessly and readily.
Maya?
So I think this is really a common theme for me, but what matters more from this perspective is the why and the vision of the company more so than the how, and then also, really the willingness of a founder to make that why a reality. And so I think that's the thing that's so crucial that a lot of founders and investors alike might get led astray and not really spend enough time on that is having a clear vision and a clear story of what you're achieving, why it matters, and your conviction to go ahead and get there. Because the how, and in this case, in the space sector, the how is quite often the technology really doesn't matter. We it's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that you're a tech company or a space company, but really every company is a relationship management company. It doesn't matter if you're a bakery or if you build rockets, you're still a relationship management company and you're working with different customers who have different problems and being sensitive to those problems and understanding them deeply and having a clear vision of how you're going to fix that problem is crucial more so than the path to get there because that path is going to be winding and convoluted no matter how smart of a team you have. But having that conviction and that vision is something that really sets a company apart. And the more founders and investors understand that, the better.
Answer to all three. Thank you very much for that. One of the other questions we've got, the answer is probably yes to this, but you guys are all looking for new investors, right?
Hmm.
Okay.
The answer
So
is typically.
so one of the questions we've got is, whether or not there are opportunities to invest in your specific organizations. if somebody on the line wanted to invest in your specific organizations, what's going to be the best way to get in touch with you guys to, hand over cash?
So I said we've got a contact form on our website. Otherwise, just brian@zonaspace.com, and easy to go from there. So
Great. Jeremiah, Bosco.
Yeah, it's Jeremiah at lunason.com, so it's pretty easy to reach me. But yeah, it's really for us. We've recognized that finding the right investors is really more important than just having investors overall, and finding capital that's aligned with our big picture vision is something that's really crucial. And so we've had investors that are even people that have invested 10 grand early on in the company that ended up being some of the most instrumental investors. And so kind of further to this question, it's having alignment of capital is something that is very crucial. And as a founder, you go ahead and you think, oh, well, I'm just going to take 500K from these random people because they're giving me 500K. But you have to remember with investors, it's really a marriage, and you have to be aligned in order to make the most use of having those people on your cap table.
Can somebody get in touch with you if they want to, slide over a check?
Yeah, I agree with everything these guys are saying. Absolutely. Bosco at Bosco at littleplace.com. And littleplace.com is our website. So feel free to reach out. Even if you're not an investor, reach out. We want to share what we do and learn more.
I'm not at all surprised that you guys are like saying, yeah, we would like some more cash to make our companies work. That wouldn't be a problem at all. No, I'm not surprised at all by that. Okay, just a little bit of time left. We're going to get to as many questions as we can. Okay, so there seems to be hesitancy for buyers to commit when there are free alternatives from the government, and free is in quotes. How are you navigating that, and what are some ways that you are showing value to potential buyers?
that one feels a little bit targeted at me, given the GPS
Yes.
mostly considered as free. So there's a couple different ways that we've had to change the perception on this one. One is, okay, look at the capability of the free services. I mean, for example, there are free roads in a lot of places, but toll roads, you still pay the money to go across the bridge because it creates value. And the second part on the GPS market specifically is that everybody sees it as a free capability, or sorry, a free service, but it's not a free capability. And this goes back to who are your customers. And if you're trying to get you or me or someone to pay for it, it feels really weird. It's like, well, I don't pay for GPS. Would I pay for this? Maybe. But if you look at a cell phone manufacturer or an automotive manufacturer or a tractor manufacturer who is spending money on a GPS chipset or a GPS receiver, there is a massive multi-billion-dollar market of everyone that pays for GPS already. And so it's just that all the value is captured by the receiver manufacturers today. So if you abstract away what we're doing with satellites, effectively what we're providing is a upgrade to those devices. And so we're providing a upgrade into a market that already sells 2 billion devices a year, and has been looking for an alternative for decades and hasn't had one, or basically a premium service or a premium upgrade for a very long time. So part of it is understanding your customer, really understanding your market, and if those are those free alternatives cutting it, and if the free alternatives aren't cutting it, then there's probably an opportunity.
Time for one final question, and this last question really is to all three of you. And I'm going to guess that this particular person is you guys from a few years ago, 3.5 to 7 years ago. Question is, if you were new to the industry and trying to break in, where would you start? Kind of an open-ended question, but thinking back to Bosco, Brian, and Jeremiah of a few years ago, where would you guys break into it?
I mean, start with the customer. So in general, if it is a space tech company using space, the military is likely going to be one of your customers. That doesn't mean it has to be your primary customer. Like for us, we have made it very clear that we have built the company around commercial needs. However, we also are proud of the work that we do with the U.S. government. And so I think things like at the SBIR program are always good places to look. But again, it's really back to the same theme, starting with the customer. It's a break into the this industry, the industry that Jeremiah's in and the industry that I'm in, we're both using satellites, but we're real different customers. And so my suggestion would be start with whoever your customers are. And the military can likely be one of those customers, which can be helpful in getting you over kind of some of those early capital humps. But ultimately, it's whoever your specific customers are for that market, which, like I said, space isn't really a market. It's imaging or navigation or communications or whatever else that market is.
My advice would be start with what you're good at. And so I know that's a bit of a glib answer, but it's really important that, if you're coming from outside of the space sector, you're able to parlay some of your skills from outside of that sector to where it's pertinent in the space industry. It's really easy to chase opportunities, but it's seldom that those opportunities you can fully develop unless you really can go ahead and intuit how you're going to solve those problems, or at least understanding the problem. And so taking your skills from outside of the space sector, being able to apply them within the space sector, I think is really crucial. And this goes back to when you start a company, you have to have that personal conviction. If you're just doing it to solve this abstract need out there and build value, that's very impersonal. You have to go ahead and really truly believe in what you're doing. And so being able to apply those skills that you're already really adept at is crucial.
Last word from you.
Yeah, just piggyback off that. You know, find the right people that believe in what you're doing and why you're doing it with you early on. Whether that's a co-founder or an early advisor or a critical team member, um, just find them because just back to the earlier comments, right? Space is different. It's different. I have the experience and fortunate enough to work in bigger organizations, small organization in other sectors. Space required quite a different skill set. From the technical side of things to running the company to fundraising, to projections and everything like that. So again, identify a early team that can support you and you can support them and you guys are aligned on the same vision. Um, it's going to be a fun ride, and sometimes it's technical support that the team give one another. Sometimes it's mental support to cheer each other up, which is always a startup journey, right? It's ups and downs. But yeah, I would definitely focus on that, and then the rest is going to be, let's say, easier because you have a team and a family around you.
Great. Guys, thank you very much for that. Attendees, thank you very much for your questions. I wish we had time to get through all of your questions. We just simply don't have time for it today. So thank you very much for listening in. Absolutely appreciate it. I'd like to say thank you one more time to Brian Manning from Xona, Bosco live from Little Place, and Jeremiah Pate from Lunasant. Guys, thank you very much for taking time out of your, what I'm sure are busy days, to talk to a really interested audience who was asking a ton of questions that we just simply didn't get a chance to address today. So thank you guys for doing that. Definitely appreciate it. It's great to talk to you all again. To our attendees, thank you for signing in and spending about an hour time with us. Looking forward to seeing you again on another Space Catalyst community webinar. Thank you very much. Have a good rest of your day, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.